Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So, today we're going to be doing this. So, this is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. And somebody asked about this when I did my review for the Wind Up Bird Chronicles. Now, it's a huge book. It's gigantic. This is all one book. It's 3 books, right? So it's like parts of a series, kind of, I get, like it seems. But in all actuality, the books are continuous. So they actually number together. If you were to cut the bindings off of all of these and bind them together, it would read as one continuous book. So let's not think this deserves 3 book reviews, because it does not actually. Does it? It deserves a super long book review because it's a huge novel. It's 1,150 pages, one novel. Now, let's just talk a little bit about the premise of the novel. So the premise of the novel is this: that the novel follows, for most of the novel, it follows 2 characters. It follows Aomami, whose name is some sort of play on peas, so like edamame, but Aoname, and Tengo. And Tengo is a young man who works at a math cram school, or a school for mathematics. He's some sort of math prodigy, or was when he was a kid. But he also works as a writer for an editor. And his editor comes to him and says, listen, I think that we have this story that was submitted for this prize, and I think it could actually take a much bigger prize, but I want you to rewrite it. We'll run it like a conspiracy. I want you to talk to the author, and I want to rewrite this thing. I think we've got a bestseller on our hands. So, then on the other character is a female who is the same age as Tengo, and because of her best friend dying to domestic violence, she has become part of a criminal underworld where she kills men who abuse their spouses. She's a hired killer. And a physical trainer. That's what she does. And their stories kind of, what ends up happening is Aomami somehow accidentally walks into another reality. And that other reality seems to have very bizarre similarities to the story that Tengo is rewriting. Right? And I know you're going to jump to the conclusion clearly she ends up in the story that Tengo is rewriting. No, she does not. That was the obvious thing where I was just that's what's got to happen. Once this thing starts going on, I'm this is clearly what happens. No, it's more delicate than that. Because here's the thing, is Murakami's, if you're familiar with Murakami's early work, Pinball, whatever, it's Pinball 67 or something, or 69, and it's about a year. It means the year, and then there's always weirdness underneath Murakami's stuff, but in general it tends to run like an actual story. Haruki Murakami really wants you to know what the characters know, and what the characters know, what anybody would know if they suddenly walked into an alternate year where only a few things have changed. What anybody would know is, not much. There's not a lot you could figure out. And one of the really interesting things about it is people who end up in this alternate reality, one of the big giveaways is there's a second moon in the sky. A smaller green moon. The thing about it is, one of the dilemmas everybody ends up in is they don't know how to deal with that. Because, if suddenly tomorrow you woke up and you looked up at the sky and you realized there was a second moon up there, how could you ask anybody? Like, people go through this in their head. They're like, well, what if I ask? Like, there's only two possible answers. And one is, wait, like, there's no second moon in the sky. Clearly, you're crazy. Or, of course, there's always been a second moon in the sky. What, you've never noticed before? What's wrong with you? So, like, you can never ask. Like, you just have to know that, like, there are only two possibilities. Like, either, because clearly you haven't grown up in a world where you've never noticed the second moon. Like, if there's a second moon in the sky and you've never noticed it before, either you're crazy or you're crazy. Those are your alternatives. Like, or you've been transferred to a new reality. And even if you've been transferred to a new reality, like, either nobody else there can see it and you'll seem crazy, or they've always been here and it's always been there and you'll seem crazy. There's no win to this drastic change in the perception of your reality. Like, so that I found absolutely and totally fascinating. But let's read a little bit. This stuff's all going to be a little off because kind of everything moves so slow in this novel. It's such a big novel. And Haruki Murakami takes so much time. Which, by the way, I say the full name because I don't really know much about foreign naming conventions. I don't want to offend the author in any sort of way. Like, because I have a lot of respect for Haruki Murakami and his writing. Like, I find it very enjoyable. So, what's set up here is that this little girl runs away from a compound. The key difference in 1Q84, which is the alternate 1984, is instead of nothing happening, there was this organization, this commune that broke off a militant section of itself, and that stockpiled guns and took on the government and caused caused police to wear different style of weapons and stuff, which is what the Ayamami notices about the alternate world. So a girl has escaped from what's left of this cult or this commune, and the woman who employs Ayamami to kill domestic abusers takes her to a doctor, and all outward signs seem to be that she has been horribly sexually abused to the point where she will never be able to have children. But the girl is saying that the little people did this to her. The little people. So, let's... Subasa is the name of the girl, and so and the dowager is the person who hires Ayamami to kill men. So and she has decided, the dowager has decided to adopt this little girl because she's been horribly abused, to replace her daughter who was killed by domestic violence or committed suicide as a result of domestic violence. Wait. Maybe was killed. I think might have been killed. I don't remember if the friend, but domestic violence caused her death, and the dowager takes revenge by hiring Ayamami to murder men. There, and now she's decided to adopt this little girl who's been sexually abused. I hope the dowager and Subasa will be happy, Ayamami thought as she walked along. If they can become truly happy, I don't mind sacrificing myself to make it happen. Because she has decided she's got to kill the leader of this cult. I myself probably have no future to speak of, but I can't honestly believe that the two of them are going to have tranquil, fulfilled lives, or even ordinary lives. The three of us are more or less the same. Each of us is born too great a burden in the course of our lives. As the dowager said, we are like a single family, but an extended family engaged in an endless battle, united by deep wounds to the heart, each bearing some undefined absence. In the course of pursuing these thoughts, Ayamami became aware of her own intense urge for male flesh. Why of all things should I start wanting a man at a time like this? She shook her head as she walked along, unable to judge whether this increased sexual desire had been brought about by psychological tension, or was the natural cry of the egg stored inside of her, or just a product of her own genes' warped machinations. The desire seemed to have very deep roots. Or, as Ayumi might say, I want to fuck like crazy. What should I do now? Ayomami wondered. I could go to one of my usual bars and look for the right kind of guy. It's just one subway stop to Roppongi. But she was too tired for that, nor was she dressed for seduction. No makeup, only sneakers and a vinyl gym bag. Why didn't I just go home, open a bottle of red wine, masturbate, and go to sleep? That's it, and let me stop thinking about the moon. One glance was all it took for Ayomami to realize that the man sitting across from her on the subway home from Hiru to Jiyugoeka was her type. Mid-40s, oval face, hairline beginning to recede, head shape not bad, healthy complexion, slim, stylish, black-framed glasses, smartly dressed, light cotton sport coat, white polo shirt, leather briefcase on lap, brown loafers. A salaried working man from the look of him, and not some straight-laced corporation. Maybe an editor at a publishing company or an architect at a small firm, or something to do with apparel. That was probably it. He was deeply absorbed in a paperback, its title obscured by a bookstore's plain wrapper. Ayomami thought she would like to go somewhere and have hot sex with him. She imagined herself touching his erect penis. She wanted to squeeze it so tightly that the flow of blood nearly stopped. Her other hand would gently massage his testicles. The hands now resting in her lap began to twitch. She opened and closed her fingers unconsciously. Her shoulders rose and fell with each breath. Slowly, she ran the tip of her tongue over her lips. But her stop was coming up soon. She had to get off at Jiyugoeka. She had no idea how far the man would be going, unaware that he was the object of her sexual fantasies. He just kept sitting there, reading his book, obviously unconcerned about the kind of woman who was sitting across from him. When she left the train, Ayomami felt like ripping his damn paperback to shreds, but of course she stopped herself. Ayomami was sound asleep in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, having an intensely sexual dream. In her dreams her breasts were large and beautiful, like two grapefruits. Her nipples were hard and big. She was pressing them against the lower half of a man. Her clothes lay at her feet where she had cast them off. Ayomami was sleeping with her legs spread. As she slept, Ayomami had no way of knowing that two moons were hanging in the sky side by side. One of them was the big moon that had always hung there, and the other was a new, smallish moon. Tsubasa and the Dowager were also asleep in Tsusaba's room. Tsubasa wore new checked pajamas and slept curled into a tight little ball in bed. The Dowager, still wearing her street clothes, was stretched out in a long chair, a blanket over her knees. She had been planning to leave after Tsubasa fell asleep, but had fallen asleep there. Set back from the street in its hilltop location, the apartment house was hushed, its grounds silent but for the occasional distant scream of an accelerating motorcycle or the siren of an ambulance. The German shepherd also slept, curled up outside the front door. The curtains had been drawn across the window, but they glowed white in the light of a mercury vapor lamp. The clouds began to part, and from the rift now and then 2 moons peeked through. The world's oceans were adjusting their tides. Tsubasa slept with her cheek pressed against the pillow, her mouth slightly open. Her breathing could not have been any quieter, and aside from the occasional tiny twitch of one shoulder, she barely moved. Her bangs hung over her eyes. Soon her mouth began to open wider, and from it emerged, one after another, a small troop of little people. Each one carefully scanned the room before emerging. Had the Dowager awakened at that point? She might have been able to see them, but she remained fast asleep. She would not be waking any time soon. The little people knew this. There were 5 of them altogether. When they first emerged, they were the size of Tsubasa's little finger, but once they were fully on the outside, they would give themselves a twist as though unfolding a tool, and stretch themselves to their full 1-foot height. They all wear the same clothing, without distinguishing features, and their facial features were equally undistinguished, making it impossible to tell them apart. They climbed down from the bed to the floor, and from under the bed they pulled out an object about the size of a Chinese pork bun. Then they sat in a circle around the object and started feverishly working on it. It was white and highly elastic. They would stretch their arms out and with practiced movements pluck white translucent threads out of the air, applying them to the fluffy white object and making it bigger and bigger. The threads appeared to have a subtly sticky quality. But before long, the little people themselves had grown to nearly 2 feet in height. They were able to change their height freely as needed. Several hours of concentrated work followed. during which time the little people said nothing at all. Their teamwork was tight and flawless. Tsubasa and the dowager remained sound asleep the whole time, never moving a muscle. All the other women in the safe house enjoyed deeper sleeps than usual. Stretched out on the front lawn, perhaps dreaming, the German shepherd let out a soft moan from the depths of its unconscious. Overhead, the two moons worked together to bathe the world in a strange light. So, this novel is, the pacing on this novel is super slow, right? There are a lot of things about kind of Ayomami's sexual encounters, and a little bit about Tengo's sexual encounters as well. And then kind of, the novel follows kind of the course of about 100 pages per month through the course of the year 1984, in general. It's very slow there is a point in the middle where you start thinking, geez, I really wonder if Haruki Murakami should be given this kind of time to work on a novel, because it is very deliberate. Things are very detailed, time passes very slowly, and there are works from this author always leave you with more questions asked than answered, and that's a huge thing for me. I really like that about novels. And 1Q84 really kind of just does that. It just kind of goes, like, do these little people exist? Apparently they do. Are you going to get any answers about why or what their function is? They're a thing. They're the inklings in Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. Now, is the story incredibly interesting? Yeah, it's absolutely and totally interesting. Do you really learn to care about Tengo and Ayomami? Yes. Like, Ayomami, the majority of the novel is about her. It's about kind of the danger she puts herself in and how frightening her life becomes in 1Q84. Tengo spends a lot of his time not realizing he lives in 1Q84, or that he has crossed over at some point. Apparently he must cross over. Yeah, and the whole idea is how these two people's lives parallel one another, and how they influence one another without either really knowing what they're doing. That there's something very interconnected about, and a lot of the supporting cast has to do with that. Like the person who writes the novel that Tengo is editing ends up being interconnected with kind of these other plot lines and this, and then this organization, which is surprisingly powerful for a small, like, religious organization. It becomes this kind of world of bizarre intrigue, and all based around this novel that Tengo is editing, while this parallel plotline is going on with this hired killer and kind of this organization sexually abusing young girls and stuff. Amazing. It's amazing. Is it a good novel? Yes, it's an amazing novel. Now, here's the thing, though. I strongly suggest, if you haven't read anything by Haruki Murakami, that you do not, under no circumstances should you start with this novel. You should start with Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, or the Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, and if you like those, if you really like those, you can read this. It's really good. But I think it's really, if you're not already into this style of writing and this kind of weird fiction, I don't really know that 1Q84 is really going to grab a hold of you in the same way those novels do. Like, if you come in and you have faith in the writer, and you know what kind of setups and payoffs there are going to be, then this is what you want, right? Like, because some stories have like a denouement, the usual suspects are the Matrix. This moment where everything comes together and you're like, finally everything makes sense, and like, this is not how Murakami works at all. Like, there are a lot of puzzle pieces, and you're not going to get all of them, right? So you're going to get, when you're done, you're going to be looking at this puzzle and going like, well, I got the whole border done, and like I can tell what the picture is, but man, I really wish I had those missing pieces. And I like that. I like that a lot. And I think, but I strongly suggest if you haven't read his other work, I think that this shouldn't be the thing that you dive into right now. I think that you really should. I really suggest. I really strongly suggest Hardboiled Wonderland and the End of the World and the Wind Up Bird Chronicles. And I know I've reviewed one and I haven't reviewed the other, but Wind Up Bird Chronicles is his most kind of well-reviewed, read in by Western audiences kind of novel. 1Q84 is definitely an attempt to do something way bigger, but like I said, it really the length of the novel really slows the pacing down. So that's my review for this. When we come back, we'll be doing some other things that I can't believe I haven't done yet. I'll be seeing you for those. Bye, everybody.